Well, I would say that the Western living standards have not declined in absolute terms, but they haven't improved. I mean, one of the most shocking statistics that I give in my book, Has the West Lost It?, is that American median income hasn't gone up in 40 years. That's quite stunning. And an even more shocking statistic is that 63% of American households don't have $500 in cash for emergency use. And America is the world's richest country. How can 2/3 of your population not have $500 emergency cash? Singapore, 2/3 of the population has emergency cash of $500. So clearly they have made some wrong policies. And the fact that the working classes in America elected a president like Donald Trump, who's very unconventional, was a protest vote by the people against the elite, saying, you are not taking care of me. You're only taking care of yourselves. So there has been a disconnect between the elites of America and the elites and the masses of America. And Europe too is having its own problems. You see the success of populist parties in many countries. And it's quite amazing that as you and I are speaking today, Italy, which is one of the oldest countries in the world, that's where the Roman Empire was based, is a very serious country, and it has elected a very funny government with a political party of clowns. That's amazing. So something has gone wrong. So I think it's a mistake for Western leaders. When I say Western leaders, I don't just mean political leaders. I also mean the intellectual leaders. And it's clear that the Western masses have been let down by their political leaders and have been let down by their intellectual leaders. Humanity has progressed a lot by adopting the best ideas and practices of Western civilization. And as I mentioned, global poverty has gone down, extreme poverty has gone down from 75% in 1950 to less than 10% today. That's amazing. So we owe a lot to the West. But paradoxically, at a time when the rest of the world are succeeding after adopting Western ideas and practices, the West is actually moving backwards. And the reason why the West is moving backwards is because the West doesn't understand that when the rest of the world wakes up, the West has got to adjust now. But unfortunately, the Western leaders, the political leaders, intellectual leaders, are not preparing for the world, which will be very different when Western domination ends. They're still carrying on autopilot. I think for a start, a few symbolic concessions to the New World Order would be a very wise thing for the West to do. And one example I've given in several of my books, including this book, The Great Convergence, is that two of the most important international organizations in the world are the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and the World Bank. And when they were established in the 1940s, when the West was very dominant in the world, had more than 3/4 of the world economy, and so they established a rule, which is now almost 70 years old, that says that to become the head of the IMF, you must be a European. To become the head of the World Bank, you must be an American. Now, that may have made sense when America and Europe was so much more powerful than the rest of the world. But the American-European share of the world economy is getting smaller and smaller. After the financial crisis in 2008-2009 at the G20 leaders meeting, America and Europe agreed that the next leader of IMF and World Bank should be selected on the basis of meritocracy and not on the basis of ethnic selection. But guess what? After the financial crisis, when Dominic Strauss-Kahn had to resign, when one Frenchman had to step down as the head of IMF, he was replaced by a French woman, Christine Lagarde. And when another head of the World Bank stepped down, he was replaced by another American. And how can you have a world where the representatives of the most successful economies of the world, including China, India, the ASEAN countries, why can't they run the IMF and the World Bank? So the idea of my book, Has the West Lost It, is please wake up. You now have to adjust and adapt to the world. And that's an idea that is almost inconceivable to Western minds.